because I had chosen the parable of the prodigal son out of sequence because of Father's Day. I thought it would be a good choice as we proceed through the parables. But I feel compelled to go back and catch up. I'd prefer to be much more sequential because the prior parables set the stage for the prodigal son, which is not the way we did it. So, I heard your niece Melissa say that your brother Richard was left-handed, so nothing went right. I feel that way many times. I must be left-handed, a southpaw. Well, I titled this message, Finders. That's wrong, huh? It's wrong. I just see that now. It's finders keepers, losers weepers, right? Did you ever say that? Was that ever part of your vocabulary? It is with your siblings especially because there's a lot of competition between you. It means that the finder is the one who found something that had been lost or misplaced. And that person got to be the rightful keeper from that point on. It's a privilege and a right of the finders to be the keepers. There's that saying, possession is 9/10 of the law. So if I'm holding it, it's way more mine than yours. Since the one who lost the item has no right to it, they are the weepers. The bottom line is that mankind is lost. As such, our souls belong to the devil, the ruler of the air, the atmosphere. We're under his influence as his possession. He has custody of us. The lost are under the influence of in his possession. He has custody of them as the keeper of their souls until they are found and saved by Jesus, the finder. I don't mind if the devil is weeping. I think he's a little too arrogant for that. He still thinks might still think he's got a fighting chance. Oh, yes, let's let the devil be the loser and the weeper. It's a simple enough concept that even a child can get this. So, having had the prodigal of the parable of the prodigal son first, it's kind of like eating the dessert first before the main course is served. True, it's that topping at the end that makes everything especially good, but you're always told don't eat your dessert first, right? Don't eat it. You'll spoil your appetite. Yeah, right. Okay, so we're going to continue with this idea of lost and found, from sorrow to celebration. Looking at the parables of Jesus, we will be once again in Luke 15:1, where we see it begins with the lost sheep, and then there's the lost coin. Jesus is giving these in sequence, and then there's the lost son, but then there's another lost son as well, who's right there with the father all along, and yet he's missing out on it. And the found, when the lost is found, there's a joy that accompanies it. Last week, maybe it's 2 weeks ago, I lost my wallet. Right? And so I hadn't been out, I hadn't used it for a while, and so traced back to the last credit card purchase and called that place. They didn't have it, and so it's time to stop payment on the cards. I'm thinking, wow, that might be out in the parking lot somewhere, a free game for the finder. I'm the loser, I'm the weeper. But you know what? I don't rush I don't get panicky about that kind of stuff because almost always it turns up. And so today, Nancy came in with something behind her back and she says, what did you say?
I said, I have something for you, and it's a get-out-of-jail-free card for me.
See, I didn't hear the for me part. I thought she was giving me my wallet back as my get-out-of-jail-free card, because it feels that way when you find something that you've lost that's so important. And so thank you, Nancy, so much. I can't thank you enough for that. Yeah. Yeah, it was out there where there was some roadside pickup that I was trying to resurrect. Yeah. Yeah. I might let it go, but she never does. Okay. All right. So we have the lost sheep, the lost sheep, the lost coin, the son and the son, but we're going to focus only on the lost sheep and the lost coin. Now, something that I would like you to be aware of is that Jesus spoke to a mixed audience of men and women. His audience included Jews, Samaritans, Gentiles, religious rulers, Roman centurions, beggars, shepherds, men, women, and children, and many more, because he came to seek and save all kinds of people. And it was contrary to the culture to include all those people, right? You know, in Judaism that was overshadowed by the Pharisees in that day, most people were untouchable. You didn't go near them, they were unclean. But here, and especially here, Jesus, we see this in these two parables he gives us, is that, you know, that saying, know your audience? He knew his audience. And it was important to him that it didn't go over anyone's head that was able to receive it, that there wasn't a group that was sidelined, and I'm not talking to you. He even talked, his messages were even inclusive of the religious leaders. And so he spoke to all kinds of unique situations. For the Son of Man came to seek and save that which was lost. Luke 19:10. He came to seek. You know, this is his own statement, referring to himself. For the Son of Man, came to seek and save that which was lost. And so he's relating these parables about the lost. I find myself compelled to speak about shepherds and to spend a little extra time on shepherds, to kind of understand the status of a shepherd, a Jewish shepherd status in Bible times. Shepherds were loathed by Egyptians. How do I know that? Well, I try to make sure that what I'm saying is based on the biblical text. And so Joseph said to his brothers, this is when Jacob and the family Jacob didn't come right away, but ultimately everyone came to Egypt because of the famine across Canaan. Joseph said to his brothers, after he had revealed himself, and to his father's household, I will go up and tell Pharaoh. I've got a good inroads with Pharaoh, and I'll say to him, my brothers and my father's household who were in the land of Canaan have come to me, and the men are shepherds. For they have been keepers of livestock, and they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have. When Pharaoh calls you, he tells them, and says, what is your occupation? You shall say, your servants have been keepers of livestock from our youth even until now, both we and our fathers, that you may live in the land of Goshen. Goshen was prime real estate. It was fertile. It was beautiful. And Joseph was looking out for his family to make sure they got in a good place where they wouldn't be verbally accosted. This was before the slavery, long before. And the king was well disposed. The Pharaoh at that time was well disposed to Joseph and his family because he had served him so well. For every shepherd is loathsome to the Egyptians. The Egyptians looked down on them. Get off my street, you filthy, no good, whatever. They didn't want the shepherds there. However, in Israel, shepherds are highly regarded. Throughout the Bible, there are so many references to shepherds, and they're highly regarded. In fact, David, the Old Testament king and prolific psalmist, wrote in Psalm 23, comparing God to a shepherd, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall want for nothing. That's a big statement, isn't it? The Lord is my why don't you say that? The Lord is my shepherd. Own it. I shall want for nothing. Reminds me of something we were talking about, Nancy. I was saying that I have changes that need to happen, but I don't know how to wrap myself around it. But I know God has the resources and God has the wisdom, and He can open the doors and guide the way. But I know that. but somehow or other I don't trust it. And I think I've got to do it myself. That's why I'm in trouble. Shepherds were represented as leaders by the prophets. God would hold them accountable. For instance, Jeremiah, I'm going to give you just two of the prophets. Woe to the shepherds who are destroying and scattering the sheep of my pasture, declares the Lord. And that's where the shepherds are the elders, and they're the ones in the leader's position, and they're being warned. Woe to you, shepherds. And Ezekiel said, the word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophesy and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Woe to the shepherds of Israel who only take care of themselves. Should not shepherds take care of the flock? Shepherds. Who else had a perspective on shepherds? Well, many Pharisees and religious leaders, I have heard in other sermons, held disdain for shepherds. And the way it was posed was that don't let your sons become a cattle driver or a shepherd because it's a low trade. Have them be doctors and lawyers, right? Isn't that the Jewish thing? You be a doctor and a lawyer. I don't want to have you being a laborer. Shepherds were considered to be, by these people, common peasants, low on the social order, uneducated, untrustworthy nomads like the gypsies, right? The gypsies have a reputation for they come and they go and they take everything they can get while they're there. Opportunistic thieves. This is the way shepherds were considered to be. They were disgusting, filthy, and ritually unclean. Because they were nomadic, they would wander into Gentile territory wherever the sheep were grazing and there was good grass. And when you're in that territory, you become unclean. And they probably had to handle dead animals and many other ways that they would have been considered unclean. And so the religious people really had no use for shepherds except that they needed the shepherds to bring the lambs to the slaughter. So they were users of them, but they had no regard for them. Let's go with that. However, shepherding was respected and valued by common people who considered it an honorable profession. Shepherds provided a staple meat for daily meals and lambs for the Passover and ritual sacrifices. Shepherds are highly regarded by the Lord to receive honor and affection. They were chosen to receive the angelic announcement of Jesus' birth in Bethlehem. Who else had angels come at the birth and say, hey, you need to go over there because today, here it is. Also, they were the first to see the newborn Savior in the manger and to believe and share the good news. So they were right in step with God's idea for how a shepherd should be. And here are the passages. Today in the city of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is Christ the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger. Well, it's a sign to us. It's a sign to everyone. But he's saying it quite personally to the shepherds. Today, this day, this child will be a sign to you. You will find a baby. It's a sign to you, wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger. So what did they do? They said, well, we'll think about that. Well, I don't know. No, it says they hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in the manger, just like they were told. When they had seen him, they spread the word concerning what had been told them about the child. And all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds said to them. So today we're looking at the parable of the lost sheep. That's where chapter 15 of Luke begins. Actually, it begins just a step backward. Tax collectors, this is verse 1 and 2, tax collectors and other notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. This made the Pharisees and teachers of religious law complain that he was associating with such sinful people, even eating with them. That's the basis or the context for Jesus telling these parables, or at least the way we should make sure that we understand as a bottom line. Now, he would be teaching these parables to the rest of the people as well. However, this is what prompts it at this time, their disdain. Then Jesus told them this parable. It's the first of three, as you know, and he says, suppose one of you has 100 sheep. Well, I feel prosperous already. How about you? But to the Pharisees, wait, not if it lumps me with those stinking no-good shepherds. I'm not really interested in having 100 sheep. Well, I guess I could have some shepherds take care of them out there, but I don't even like to be associated with them. Here we go. There's that lost sheep. And suppose you lose one of them. You lose one of them. Would you not leave the 99 in the open country? I've often thought about this and thought, that sounds so irresponsible. You're a shepherd out there, you've got 100 sheep, one of them disappears, and so you leave 99 out there vulnerable to the wolves and the thieves and everything else. That's not what's going on. Because 100 sheep required more than one shepherd. So they were would have been left in the custody of another responsible person who knew how to handle sheep, and maybe they had a sheepdog or other ways of containing them. He didn't just leave them. He wasn't irresponsible and leave them in jeopardy from his neglect. It would have been neglect. And maybe he's the one considered to have lost the sheep. He's also responsible for it, so the owner of those sheep is going to say, hey, you're costing me money. It's either your job or you pay back for the cost of that sheep. You can do it in labor. And wouldn't he go after the lost one until... Now, I'm going to change the words a little bit. And wouldn't you go after the lost one? I'm kind of really directing it towards the Pharisees. Until you find it? Because they're the ones he really wants to focus on, or anyone else who hears it. Wouldn't you go after the lost one until you find it? How about you? You lose something. It's important. It may not be the whole thing, but it's an important thing to you. You want it back. It's valuable. And when you find it, he's gone out on a limb. When you find it, what measure of concern can be seen in finding this one lost sheep? Maybe it was nighttime. Maybe he lost his night's sleep doing that. Maybe he had to travel far and wide to find this lost lamb. He, in a sense, is going out on a limb to find that little lamb. And I imagine his heart jumps when he finally does, and he's also probably a little disgusted with the darn thing. Why do you think that people are compared to sheep? Sheep aren't very smart. We don't like to think of ourselves, but they're super vulnerable. They can't take care of themselves. They don't know. They'll go the wrong way. They'll put themselves in jeopardy. They're really very dependent on the shepherd. They're not carnivores. They got no teeth and claws to fight back. They can drown, yeah?
I'm thinking the shepherd's not disgusted because he knows it's just a sheep.
Yeah.
And it's not very bright.
All right.
And
He knows that. He knows that, but and maybe this one even has a chronic problem, but he has to put something out to get that sheep back. I think I'd say, you darn sheep, at least. I think I'd at least go.
A good shepherd.
Yeah. Well, that's why he went after it. Other less committed shepherds might have given it up for dead and gone back to bed. What does a good shepherd do when he finds that one lost sheep? You're good shepherds, right? Your child needs some extra special attention. You're a good shepherd to them. You joyfully put it on your shoulders and carry it home. They weren't necessarily light. The distance wasn't necessarily short. They put that And they've already spent a long time going after it. And so, and maybe it's at the end of the day. And so there's every reason to think that, okay, now I got you, but I got to get you back. That's the whole idea. But they're joyful. That was the point we're tossing back and forth here. They're joyful about it. They put it on their shoulders. It's a very personal thing. And they carry it home. And you've also heard that sometimes a shepherd, when they have a chronic, wandering, wayward lamb, they will break its leg and carry it on their shoulders, taking it back, and that sheep grows up to realize it can't just run away. Then, and here's a point, then would you not, that's tough love, right? We talked about that briefly last week. Then would you not call your friends and neighbors together and say, "Rejoice with me, for I have found my lost sheep"? Yeah. Frankly, it seems a little overdone. You're going to call your friends and your neighbors and you're going to say, "Hey, let's have a party. Rejoice with me. I found my lost sheep." But that's the way Jesus is presenting it. He's making it very clear that what they lost is very important to them. He is describing a good shepherd, and he's saying the way that we should approach life. You know, I told Nancy I would take her out to lunch afterwards. You know what? She found my wallet. We had lunch out yesterday and the night before, so like we don't normally eat out that much. But you know, it once was lost, but now you found it. Look at this picture. There he is. He's got it on his back. He's letting other people know that, hey, let's celebrate, rejoice with me. And I took the liberty of the lamb doing the same. If it could, that bad little lamb would call the rest of the flock together and say, "Rejoice with me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Yay, I'm home again. I really didn't like being out there on the ledge, but that's where I wound up. I was foolish." Jesus then follows by saying, "I tell you that in the same way there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents." But think about it a second. How repentant do you think the sheep was? You think how did the sheep come up and say, "Oh, thank you so much I'll never do it again. Thank you for rescuing me"? You know, it's an interesting picture that's being painted here of this sheep repenting, but it's being compared to a sinner. It's just an illustration so that Jesus can make the point. There's more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents. An interesting ratio. It's a 99-to-1 ratio of people who need not repent. Well, you haven't seen that part yet. We'll go there. Then over 99 righteous persons who need not to repent. Do you know any? For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Nobody, you know, so he's just tailoring this to, I tell you, Pharisees, that in the same way there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents, like these tax collectors, like these so-called sinners that I enjoy the companionship of because they're responsive. They're hearing what they need to hear, and they are open and receiving. They have ears to hear and eyes to see what I've been saying all along. So he's making this comparison. Parables do that. They put one thing alongside of another so that there's a comparison. And the comparison here is this silly sheep that is like a person who wanders off. "All we like sheep have gone astray," Isaiah said, "each of us to our own way. But the Lord has laid the iniquity of us on him." That's the way that goes. I might have a slide in here that will repeat that, but I don't want to miss it. So he's talking, so if it's a 99-to-1, this is worthwhile considering too. The majority view of non-repentant religious people mistakenly feel secure on the broad path. 99, that's the broad path to handle 99, that leads to destruction. I think this is a message for everyone. If it's a 99 to 1 ratio, and he says the road is wide that leads to destruction, and the path is narrow that leads to everlasting life. It's something to really take to heart. And I find that as I put these messages together, they're very convicting. They speak to me. I don't get to stand on the pedestal. No, in fact, I'm held to a higher standard. You know, I have to walk the talk. I want to walk the talk. It's not necessarily easy. I tell you, in the same way as that shepherd is rejoicing, so the man is rejoicing. His neighbors are rejoicing with him. He's invited them in. But over all that, the angels in heaven are rejoicing. Man, that's a win.